Yeah, so now we have finished our basic discussion on the way of the button event, search pages, the Vivo and entity. So now we are getting into another phase where we discuss about the mini project. And this mini project
Okay.
involves most basic functionalities which you generally come across. So this is like a repeat of our components, which we repeat of our discussion which we had earlier. Okay. So in this one, we also discussed earlier, what exactly it would have, but let me repeat again. So this mini project will have two pages. One is invoice search page and another one is invoice DML page. Okay. So in the search page,
Okay.
it's like a search region. You'll have a search criteria, like a main region, like a search region and table region. So in the table region, you'll have the functionalities like create, okay, as well as delete, create and delete. And now generally table region will have multiple records, right? Like maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. So what we do is you'll have a view option as well as you'll also have an update option like this. Okay. And this particular one, generally update will not be enabled for all the records. It will be enabled only if the record is draft. It will be
Okay.
enabled only if the record is draft. In other cases, you will not have the update link for a given record. So that's a search page functionality. And coming to the invoice DML page functionality, you'll have a main region and you'll have a header region. So header data, you'll see header data here, and then you'll see a table region here. In this, you'll see lines data.
Okay.
Okay, this how it will be. And the major components which we use is like if you consider the MVC layer, we'll use AM, Vivo, Evo, and so if we consider the view layer, we see pages, we see regions, we'll see header regions, table region, attachment, link item, hyperlink, button, page button bar, okay, LOV,
Okay.
pop list, and the major one is switcher, which we have not yet discussed, but we'll try to introduce that in that here. Okay, so these are the
Okay.
major functionalities of these particular two pages. And coming to other major important thing is like page forward. So page forward we have not yet discussed, like how do we pass parameter between pages. That logic we'll discuss here in this one.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So for this particular one to implement, I'll be considering two custom tables. Okay. So one is headers and another one is lines. So here. So one is invoice header. Okay. So generally invoice header means nothing but it will have header data. In this invoice underscore header underscore ID is the primary key. Okay. And it will have header level
Mm-hmm.
information. Mostly it will have the header ID, header number, amount, status, and description, and the currency also.
Okay.
And the invoice line will have a line data. In this one, you'll have the foreign key of the invoice header ID. Okay. And invoice line ID is the primary key here. It will have a line number, line type, amount, line description.
Okay.
Okay. This is structure of this invoice lines. Now anyway,
Okay.
so initially we'll try to discuss about like a creation of the components, because here in this one if you observe we cannot implement the model layer at a stretch, right? At a single point of time we cannot write the total logic and design the view layer. So this is like, we have
Mm-hmm.
to go with agile approach. We cannot go with the waterfall approach in these kind of things. So
Okay.
we have to design partial portion first. We have to check the functionality, again iterate the same thing, implement the next functionality, iterate it, right? So that's how we have to do it. So incremental approach, I mean to say, may not be agile. It's like incremental approach we have to go with. Build only partial
Okay.
portion, build 10%, finish it, again build the remaining 10%, again do it. The reason is because we have lot number of methods. Okay, so we can't just write at a stretch. We have to go with like step-by-step approach. Okay, so the initial approach, like when you are working in a larger projects, well, let us say I'm saying about OF assignment, remaining things anyway you are well versed, you'll know how to do it. But coming to the OF stuff,
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost like a divide and conquer kind of thing. When you have a larger functionality to implement, just first of all design the building blocks, nothing but initially just design the pages, initially just design the controllers, and just go with simple buttons. Like let us say now we would like to, first of all, when I click on create, it has to navigate to next page, and when you click on back, it has to come back to the same landing page. So that's how we'll try to go it.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, let's start. 1 minute, so I have to change this one. Okay,
Yeah.
so now here what we do is, first of all, we'll try to create just pages, because in the model layer we don't want to implement all the functionality now. Okay, just initially we'll just try to build only the pages. So one is invoice search, another one is invoice DML page. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
so here in this one, so create a page, set the controller. Okay, now set the default properties on this. Okay, so this is our invoice search. In this one, what we do is this, like here uh, on the main region, perform a right click on new region, and here set the region style as page button bar. Set the region style as page button bar. This is the first time we are using this page button bar. Okay,
Yeah.
page button bar region. So in the page button bar region, I'll just create a new item under this new item and set the item style as create. Set the item style as submit button. Yeah, create INV button. Create invoice. Okay. Now the same way, we'll create one more page, invoice GML page. Invoice DML CO. Okay. So now here also in the invoice DML page, again I'll perform a right click here, click on new region, set the region style as page button bar. Under this page button bar, I'll just create a new item, set the item style as submit button, and I'll just say back button, or maybe cancel. Okay, yeah, now let's run the pages. As of now, there is no business logic available in this one, but we just want to see how they look like, because we would like to implement only the page forward functionality initially. So if you want to implement the page forward functionality, we have to know the address of each pages, right? So now let's run this invoice search page. Okay, and this is how the page is looking like. And if you observe this particular button, this is getting repeated. The reason is, if any item is a part of page button bar, that will be shown twice. Okay, and these kind of things will be used when you are having a longer page. Nothing but, let us say you have a larger number of regions and you have some functionality which is on the top. It becomes the business user to scroll up and again perform the functionality, right? In those kind of scenarios, these kind of buttons, I mean, this particular region will be used, the page button bar. Okay, and now what we require the address of this particular page. Okay, so I'll just copy the address here. And what we require, we just require only OA.jsp, then yeah, and the remaining is not required. And remaining information generally, like we have transaction ID, we have other kind of J session ID, right? So generally, like here, the normal Oracle ERP, you have the concept of ICX, right? ICX session or F&A session table. So whenever you generally run any OF page, it will have a information the ICX session table also. Okay.
So the transaction ID is the session ID string?
No, transaction ID is not the session ID, I guess. Like you have something called J session ID, and again it will be linked. It won't be direct session ID. There are multiple tables involved in this one.
Okay.
Now run the DML page.
Firstly, earlier we created some of the table regions, right?
Yeah.
Where we had the select button, delete, and insert button. So
Yeah.
there also those buttons are repeated both above and below the tables. So is it something that is
That is part of table actions, right? They are like those buttons were part of table actions in a given table region.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes, like, let us say if you want to know like which button is part of which region, always check the button and its parent. So by that you can understand, okay, in which particular hierarchy they are.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Now in our case, this is okay. Now these are the pages. These are the page address for us now. And now how do we do navigate? That's a major important part. Okay. So let's see the functionality now. So there is an API called set forward your URL or maybe forward immediately. There are two APIs which we have it. So if you observe here, this is one of my code snippet. So I need to use an API method called forward immediately. So in this one we have lot number of parameters, but initially we just go with only few stuff. Only we'll just try to go with our page. The remaining we'll just go with as it is. Okay. Now this will be the one we have to use it now. So in the invoice search SIVO, when a user clicks on create INV button, in the process form request, we have to write the code now. The page context dot okay. So this is what we have to use it, and here the important parameter is the first parameter in which we have to pass the address of the page. So let's take the address of the page. So when I click on create invoice, we have to navigate to the DML page. So that's what we are trying to achieve. So the navigation for the invoice DML page is this one. Okay.
Yeah.
The remaining parameters as of now, we'll just go ahead with the default. In the same way, we have to design in our invoice DML CO also for the back button, right? The only thing is that this is the difference. So when user clicks on back or maybe cancel, we have to navigate back to the landing page, nothing but our search page. Okay. So here we have to change the button name, back button. Okay. So let's see how it navigates. So just click on create button, right? It went to
Yeah.
DML page. Now just click on this cancel or maybe back. It has navigate to search page, right? Just to and fro.
Oh,
So this is how we can navigate between pages. So now the first functionality which you would like to implement is the search functionality in the invoice, this particular landing page. We just want to
oh,
design the search functionality. Now, so the logic which I would like to follow in this particular search page is, so generally like if you want to show the data in any of the page, we have to have the Vivo, isn't it? But this time in the search page, we would like to provide the delete functionality within the search page and the remaining operation in the other pages, but the delete as well as the, if you consider the CRUD operation, create, read, update, delete. So read as well as delete will be provided within the search page itself. Okay. Update and yeah. And of course the read again. Update, read and create will be provided in the DML page. Okay.
yeah.
So in the search page, I would like to provide the delete functionality. So then what we have to do, we require the entity object, right?
Yeah.
So that's the reason we have to use the entity object in the search page. Okay. So now what we do is like we have, if we consider the MVC layer, we have to create the entity object, then the Vivo object. Okay. So let's create the entity object now. Schema server, new entity object. Click on next. Okay. XXCUS. Okay. This
Yeah.
is my entity object. Now click on next. Next. And here, remember whenever you create entity object, by default it may not generate all these things, but we can also, now this time we can try to generate them. Create, remove, data manipulation and validation. I'll try to generate all the methods and later on we'll try to observe what happens. I mean, at what point of time these are getting called. Click on next. Now we require to generate the Vivo also. See, Vivo can be generated independently, or we can also generate from this. So it is best that you generate now itself, because anyway we have to create the Vivo for this particular Evo. Okay, but let us say as a developer, sometimes you may miss something, right, while creation. So that's what. Still, if you forget to generate, what you can do is you can still create a Vivo based on the Evo. That's still a possible approach.
Oh,
Evo
yeah.
and Vivo. Now this step will generate one entity object and one Vivo object. Now double click on our AM and move the Vivo. So remember, we cannot move any entity object. It doesn't even show it here. Okay, only Vivo can be moved it.
No.
Okay, yeah. So the next functionality is like in the invoice search page, we need to design our search functionality. Okay, in the invoice search page. So what we'd like to do is in the search functionality as of now, we'd like to provide the search functionality based on the invoice number. Okay, based on the invoice number we would like to provide. So on the main region now, I require two regions. One is for the purpose of search criteria region, and other one is search results region. So nothing but two header regions I'll create first. And here I'm performing creation of a region on the main region. Okay, if you try to create a region, if you just select page button bar and if you create, it will create a region under the page button bar. Okay, but I don't want to create a region under the page button bar. I want to create under the main region. So that's the reason we have to select main region and perform right click. Okay, now we have created two regions. One is search region, and another one is results region. Invoice header data. So under the results region, what we do, we'll try to create a region using a wizard, and all the data should be read only, because within the search page we don't want to perform any update, but still we want to perform only deletion. Okay, so that's the reason all the columns should be in a read only fashion only. So new region using a wizard. Next, select the Vivo. Next, table region. I'll select all the columns, but we does not require the who columns, so I'll remove them. Who columns we doesn't want to show in the page, so I just remove them. Next, and make all of them as message style text. Next, and finish. Okay. And the next functionality is search functionality, right? So we'd like to provide a search criteria on the invoice number. So click on new item. So we require two items. One is for the invoice number, another is for the submit button. So change the item style to submit button. Sorry, item 1, let it be as text input, invoice number ID. Okay, enter invoice number. Okay, initially it will be text input only. Okay, so change this one to submit button, search button. Okay, so before writing any code, let's see how it is looking like, and then we'll see. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Search and the result region. Okay, and here if you observe search, like it is showing left align and the button is showing somewhere here, right? So actually this search region which is getting shown doesn't look that much good, but still we can change that one. What you do is, so here if you try to change this one, like here maybe if you remember, I think, I'm not sure we discussed. So generally, like when you're implementing any search pages, the best thing is we have to use a region called message component layout region. Okay, we have to use a region called message component layout, where we have a flexibility to it will, the basic thing is it will align the items automatically. That's the first basic thing. And also you can mention how do you want to represent. Let us say if you're having 5 columns, how do you want to represent, like 2 rows or a 3 rows or a 2 column fashion, in a matrix fashion. You can clearly tell to the uh, framework that like what is the layout you want to display for those particular items. Okay, in our case what we do is, so under the search header region, I'll just create a new region and change the style to message component layout. Okay, and in this one you have something called number of rows and number of columns. I require 2 rows and 1 column, so I'll just mention like this. Now I'll just drag and drop the invoice number ID under this one as a child. And also if you try to drag and drop the button, it will not accept. Can you see? It says cannot insert submit button under the message component layout. But if the button is not part of the same region, the look and feel again will get disturbed. So, but we have an option called, what you do is, under the message component layout region, just create a new message layout region. There is a region called message layout. Create message layout and drag and drop the item under this as a child. Now this is our message component layout region. Okay. Now try to run the page and see how this looks like. right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the difference. So we have the item, the search button under the text input correctly like that. It will get aligned properly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now next, let's implement the search functionality. Let us say when a user enters the invoice number and clicks on search, this has to get populated. And now this particular table region is assigned to which Vivo? Our invoice header Vivo instance, isn't it? XXUS invoice header Vivo1. So now let's write the business logic in the aim for this particular Vivo header Vivo. So the expectation is user has to pass the invoice number, and remember, like here, if you observe the query, if you observe this particular invoice header query, that was generated using the entity object, isn't it? This was generated using entity object, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and by default, if the Vivo query if your Vivo got generated from the entity, this will be shown in read-only mode, but still you have an option called expert mode. Click on this one, so it will allow you to update it. Okay. Yeah. So let's write the logic now. So public void. Okay. Now the basic thing is here in our search page, we would like to the first basic thing is like this is not mandatory. Okay, the invoice number is not mandatory, and we don't want to perform the equal operation. We would like to perform the like operation. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's see that. So first thing is we have to check whether the invoice number is null or not.
Yeah.
If invoice number is not null, we have to perform the operation one way. If it is null, we have to perform another way. Either still you can use in NVL logic also. It is not that I have to use like this. Or other thing is you can also, what you can do is rather than binding the where clause at runtime, you can still directly modify the Vivo. You can have a where clause there and you can simply bind it, right?
Yeah.
Right. If it is not equal to null, and if it doesn't equal to empty string, generally in the Java we have a problem like it where you have it is not equal to null, but still it'll have a empty value. It'll have empty value. Okay. So that's the reason we always try to check this particular condition also. If it is not equal to null and if it is not equal to empty string, then it means that I have a value in the invoice number. So then what I can do, I can just say vivo dot set where clause, right? And what is the column name? So when you're binding the where clause, you have to go with the column name, not the binding parameter, not the view attribute.
Yeah.
Inv underscore number. Inv underscore number, like now the single quote percentile plus invoice number plus double quotes percentile comma, right? That's it. So this is how we want to bind the where clause. Else, in other case, what you can do, it does not require any other where clause, right? So simply just write execute query. That's it. So only you have this particular logic when you have the invoice number. If you want to print the query, we can also print like this: vivo.get query, which will print the query, the total vivo query at runtime. So we can have the logs initially when during design time it is very difficult to debug. So better we can have all the log statements like this. These SOPs has to be removed once you're trying to deploy the page to the instance. Okay, these SOPs are not preferred. These SOPs are never preferred because it will eat up the Java log file. So that's the reason they never prefer to have the SOPs.
Yeah. In production, when we move the this from developer to the actual instance stream, where do we put our log messages?
There is something called diagnostics. We'll write we have a method called page context dot write diagnostics. So in that using diagnostics, we have to write the logic. Okay. So now when the user clicks on search button, and if they enter this one, we have to pass it. So now how do we get the value from the text input box? We have to get the value, right? Yeah, so for the text input, either you can use a web bean approach, or you can also write like this: string invoice number str is equal to page context dot get parameter. So this will work for most of the components, like maybe for the LOV or pop list or this text input or style text, it works. But the general preferable approach is try to go with message text input, in our case, like, which is a message text input component.
One message, second message.
Oh, a message. Okay. And web bean dot find index shell recursive, mention the bean instance, perform typecasting. Okay, now get value page context. So this will have, generally it will generate the object type, so we have to cast it to string. Now we require the aim instance, so perform typecasting. Now aim dot init invoice header view. Sorry.
It's an EMP EOV mostly.
Okay, let me copy. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Now let's run it. So I'll just click on search without entering any data. Right, we got the data now. Right, let us say if I pass invoice number like this, click on search. Right, we could see only one invoice number data. Right, so search functionality is almost done. Try again.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what we'd like to do is, when user clicks on create invoice, okay, so anyway, delete functionality we'll not discuss now because we know the approach, right? So that's the reason what we do is, let's work on our create invoice. So what exactly happens when you click on create invoices? If you click on create invoice, it navigate back to DML page. In this one, we'll have two regions. One is for the header region and other is for the lines region. Okay, our initial concentration is only on the header region, nothing but header data.
Okay.
So what we do is, we have to show the set of columns like invoice header ID, invoice number, status, draft, currency, and all those things in an appropriate layout. So we'll try to prefer our message component layout region. In that, we'll show all the columns of that, and we'll also provide a save button. And once you click on save, it will save the data in the invoice header table. Okay. And once you click on back button, you'll navigate back to search page and you'll try to see the data again. Okay. That's what we'd like to do it. Let's see that. So now the basic thing is, we want to show a region where user can enter the invoice header data in the invoice DML page. That's what we want to show. So in the invoice DML page, what we do, so in this main region, on the main region, perform a right click on new region. Okay, click on new region, and here I'll just mention it as header update data region. invoice header data. Now we want to show like around 6 columns we have, right? Around 6 columns we have. So anyway, like for this particular one, the best suitable region is again message component layout. But for the message component layout region, we don't have the wizard option. So what I will do is, first of all, on the on the header update region, I'll just perform a region using a wizard. Click on new region using a wizard. Next, select the Vivo. And here time being, I'll just select default single column time being. Okay.
Okay.
I'll select the columns. And this has to be message text input only because we would need to insert the data and finish. Okay. Now then what I will do, simply change this one to message component layout now. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 columns. Now we can mention how do you want to represent, like how many columns and how many rows, right?
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now like here, now we require one more button. So in the page button bar, I'll provide a button called save new item, submit, sorry, save button, save. Okay. Yeah. So before implementing the logic, I would like to show you one error, and then based on that, I'll tell you what is the reason and what is the logic we have to write. Okay. Click on the create button directly. Now can you
Not
see?
really.
Right? We could see our invoice header data where user can enter the information, right? Now just try to enter the data. Okay. So only there are two parameters are mandatory, header ID and invoice number, and the remaining are not mandatory. We can just ignore. Now just click on save and see what is the issue. Can you see?
Stale data. Okay.
Stale data. And why it is telling the stale data? Developer mode stale data, and just observe the cause. The view object contained no record. The displayed record may not have been deleted, or the current row, the current record for the view object may not have been initialized. So now this is the issue. The current record is not initialized. The current record is not properly initialized. So what it means is, if you observe, I'll just click on back button. Now here we have this particular page, we have these components, and you have these particular columns, and to which particular view instance these are tied. If you observe our DML page,
Header.
this header,
Header.
this all stuff is assigned to the Vivo instance, the header Vivo instance, right? Now, if you are in the DML CO, are we initializing the Vivo? Because what happens is, see, generally like you have a Vivo instance, so unless you execute a Vivo, it is not initialized. That is the logic, isn't it? You have a Vivo, unless you execute, it is not called it, and we can't say it is initialized. If it is executed, then only we can say it is initialized. Okay. So now,
Yeah.
generally, like as per the framework, what you have to do is, if you want to insert any data in the Vivo, it has to be in an initialized fashion. So in this case, what we are trying to do, we're trying to insert a row, because unless you have a row in the Vivo, user should not enter the data, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is the reason. So now what we have to do is, one more basic reason is here. If you observe, okay, let me write and then I can explain you. So the first basic reason what we have understand is we have to initialize the Vivo. That's the reason we got the error. So double click on the Vivo. Now we require the row impl also. Click on the Java. I'll click on generate row impl. Click on apply and okay. Now let's write the logic for the insertion. So the same logic here. The logic which we use the insertion earlier. Okay, but little bit difference here. So first of all, get the Vivo instance, XXCS header Evo Vivo, and get the line also. Now, one basic thing here is, in this particular one, if you observe, if you execute the Vivo, what happens? It will fetch the data, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but do we, I mean, are we really want to, like, do we need to show any data in the
We don't
page?
want to.
Do
Yeah,
we
we
want?
don't have to.
Yeah, we don't want to show the data, right? But the the basic thing what we require is we want to insert a row into the Vivo. That's it. We don't want to execute the Vivo literally, because we are not trying to display the header data in the page. So in this scenario, then how can you stop that, or how can you, like, what is the functionality we have to write? So here we have to write a functionality called, instead of executing the query, just mention vo.setMaxFetchSize as 0. So this is equivalent. I don't say it is totally equal, but just for understanding purpose, it is equivalent to our execute query. But vo.setMaxFetchSize will not execute the query. Okay. So if at all, if you want to just initialize the Vivo for the purpose of insertion, we have to use Vivo.setMaxFetchSize. Clear? Now the remaining logic is same, like row is equal to, yeah.
So here can we set where clause where 1 equal to or something like that, and then even in that case the view will not fetch any data.
No, it's not about fetching the data. You're executing query, right? Let us say if you just mention, okay, dummy where clause, that is correct. You have a dummy where clause, but still you're executing the query, right? What is the need of executing query?
Okay.
It's like unnecessary, you're wasting the memory, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the reason we have this set max fetch size functionality. So it will just initialize the Vivo for the insertion.
Okay.
Okay. So now this logic, where we have to call this insert row, where we have to call?
It's going to be called in that navigation button, right?
Yeah. So nothing but in the process request you have to call, because by on the load we have to insert a row, isn't it?
Yeah. Can we call it in process form request of the other button?
Yes, process form request also we can call it, but on which button you will call it?
In the previous page we have a button, right? Create.
No. Here I'm talking about Acha. See, one basic thing is, now here if you observe, like let us say click on back. Okay. Now when you click on create invoice, we are navigating to another page, right? So you're trying to show the data in another page. Nothing but when you click on create, you're navigating to another page, and the functionality which is relevant for that particular page, it is better that we have to write in that particular CVO, isn't it?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the reason in the process request of the DML page, you are writing the logic. So in the other page also we can write it, if at all, if you have the aim as initialized, aim what you call aim is true.
Okay.
Okay. Aim dot. Yeah. And also write the logic for the save button.
So previously when we got the error, we did not have any logic in the save button, but still it gave an error, right?
Yes, correct. And one more important thing here. Yeah. So we just first thing is we have the button, but we just when we have not written any logic, but when you just clicked on the button, so as per our PFR, there is nowhere we wrote that logic, isn't it? As per our process form request, the error which was getting shown is not the custom error, right? It's some seeded error. But what happens is in the CVO, there is one more method. Generally, it is like we never implement that. There's a method called form value. Okay. Process form validation. So that particular one will generally validate these kind of things. Okay. Can you see it? Process form request, process form data. Sorry, process form data. This is the one. So, and even if you see like which one will get called first is process request will be called, then the process form data, then process form request will be called. So in this case, process form data was getting called. That was, that's the one which is raising that issue. Yeah. So now. Okay. And also here, if you observe, like in our page, we have the header ID, right? So the header ID, the preferable one is like we need to create, we need to, we would like to generate it as a sequence. We don't want user to enter. Generally, even the header ID will not be shown in the page, but just during development purpose, I'm just showing that. But the expectation is that header ID should be generated by default, and it should not be shown. Okay. So in those kind of scenarios, what you can do, you have to use your database sequence. Like in our case, also we have the sequence. Star. Okay. No.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can use this particular sequence, invoice header ID underscore s. Okay. So where should we write the logic now for this particular sequence? While inserting a row into the Vivo, this is where we have to write it. Before insertion, what we do? Now we got the row from the Vivo, and here, so now just get the sequence Oracle JBO domain number header ID sequence is equal to get sequence value, and make sure that this should be in uppercase. Okay. XXCUS invoice header.
Actually, you wrote something like RKJB1 or like that. That's wrong.
Yeah, see, the basic thing is here, if you observe, I'll just click on get sequence value and observe here. Can you see what is the return type of sequence value?
Oh.
Oracle JBO domain number. So this is, see, like data type is actually, if you consider, it is a number only. I mean, it is an integer, but like in the Java terminology, we have JBO domain number, java.util number, we have integer, we have int, the basic integer int also. So there are a lot number of data types. So the reason why you have these data types is, see, like this particular Java language, if you consider, it has been there from many years, right? So generally what they do is developers, like they will not replace the existing libraries. They may try to enhance it if they can, or else they'll just create one more particular library. That's how they do it. So this JBO domain number is specifically used in our OA framework as well as ADF framework. This is not used in the normal Java programming. Let us say if you're working on a JSP or servlets, you'll not even observe this particular JBO domain number. This JBO is specially for our OAF or ADF. Maybe Oracle would have written its own set of libraries for the number functionality. Okay. So now what we are doing is get the header ID. So get sequence value is one of the method. You just need to pass the sequence information. It will return you the value. So then what we have to do, you got the header ID, then simply set the value, row.set invoice header ID. And can you see here, invoice header ID requires a number data. That's it. Okay. And other thing what we have to change in the invoice HTML page, yeah, set this one as either you can change it to message style text. You can change this one to message style text, or other property what you can do is there's a property called disabled property. There's a property called not disabled. Oh, this already said. Acha. I'm not sure. I set it already to message style text, it seems. Let us say if it is message text input, what you can do, you can just set it as read only to true. Right? Understand? If it is message text input, you can just set it to read only to true, or simply you can change this one to message style. Yeah.
I think we are in the reverse region still. I think we are on the first page now.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So it is message style.
Yeah. Okay.
We are on the search page.
Yeah.
Search.
Yes, correct. Okay. Invoice search, invoice DML. Yes. Yeah. So invoice header ID, it is already message text input.
Okay.
So we can just simply set the read only as to true, or we can change it to message style text.
Okay.
Either way. Either way is fine. Now I'll just click on invoice search page. Click run it. And one more thing is, if you're changing the item style from one item style to another item style, sometimes it may lose the properties. It may lose some set of properties. We have to be very much careful in that. Okay. Because you don't have undo option here. You don't have any undo. If you're trying to change something in a page, you cannot do any undo. The best thing is just close the JDeveloper without saving it and reopen it. That's it. Because in the ADF, if you consider the JDeveloper latest version ADF, you have the you can get the backup versions. Still, you don't have the undo stuff. Sorry, you have the undo there. You can just press Control Z. It gets to your previous state. That is there. And it shows the different saved versions also. Let us say you have been working on a page from past seven days, and it shows all your latest history.
Okay.
You can restore the previous version, I mean to say. Yeah. Let's click on create invoice, and now can you see the invoice header ID got generated? And I'll just say invoice 262, amount is 500, currency is INR, test, and this particular one status also should be read only mode. We'll try to do that. Click on save. Right, data got saved, and check it from backend also. 62. I'll just say order by 1 descending. Right, 262. And now click on back, and maybe you can try again 262 here. Right. So this is how we can generate. This is how we can perform the insert shop in the insertion stuff. Okay. So click on create invoice. It will generate a new record, and once you save it, once you come back, we can see the latest data in the search page. Okay. So now here next, we have few more things, it is, we'll go on enhancing it. Okay, we'll go on enhancing it.
Yeah.
So time being, I think I'll stop here. I'll take a logical conclusion here. So we'll save here, we'll stop here, and next class we'll again see some more functionalities of the same thing. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So you said we can write the controllers at the main page level, or we can write controllers at the region level also, right?
Yes, correct.
So if we write controllers at both the levels, then which one will execute first, and what will take precedence to?
So first thing is, observe here. Let us say when you say page level, so nothing but you have a main region, and at this level you'll have your CO and you'll have a AM. Okay, and assume that you have multiple regions, like a region 1, region 2, like this. Now assume that this is also having its own CO. I can say AM1, CO1, like this. Now observe here, which is top. Main region is the top one, right? So what will happen is,
if I have a button in region 2,
yes, yeah,
and if I click that button, which code will execute first? CO1 will
execute. So when you click on button, the first always parent CO will be called, then the child CO will be called. This is how it works. Even though you have the button which is a part of your region 2, it will call the parent first, then it will call the child next. Okay.
All right then.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. See you tomorrow.